So let's talk about loops. And there's two main different kinds of loops within Swift. There's a for loop and a while loop. And that looks like for or while. Those are the two different loops. What a loop is basically a block of code or a function that executes over and over and over again while a certain condition is true until that condition is no longer true, and then it stops executing it. This is a really great way to kind of build in quick ways of like printing like a series of numbers, or detecting a series of things in order, or checking for, let's say a very common case would be like, oh, they give you four numbers and you want to plug each number into a different like cell in a table. You might say for the number of numbers that they gave us, create that many cells. It's just a good way to generate content quite easily. Now, I will say with for loops and with while loops, it's extremely easy to break your code, because if you don't have a way of getting out of those for or while loops, if you don't have a way of escaping from them, therefore meaning that the condition becomes false for them to stop executing, then you will endlessly be in that loop, and that code will endlessly execute again and again and again. So I'd recommend you be really cautious with for and while loops and use them sparingly in your code, only whenever you have to. So let's write a for loop. So I'm going to write the word for, and we see for Swift statement. If I click that, it's going to pull this up. So what it's saying is for item in items, execute this code. So we would say for a certain number and another number, execute this code over and over and over again. So for example, it's very common to say for I. You'll see this all the time in code, and that stands for index, but I'm going to actually write out index. For index in, and let's say 0.5. So for a value in 0 through 5, print the following content. So we're going to do this code sort of over and over and over again. So we're going to run this code 5 times, basically, is what we're going to do. So let's write a little piece of code. We'll say print, and let's do index is at, and then we'll write backslash, and we'll say index, so we can see how this runs. So let's just hit run. And it ran, oh, I used the wrong slash here. I'll leave this in so that you can see my error. And there we go. So let's see what it printed. It printed 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it actually ran this 6 times and not 5 times, because we count 0. So what we're saying is for x value in, and then we gave it a range of numbers, do this. So it's at 0, and then it added 1 to it, it's at 1, and we added another 1 to it, it's at 2, and we added another 1 to it, it's at 3, and so on and so forth. So let's change this to 1 through 5 and run it again, and it should run 5 times. All right, so it did. So imagine how you could use this. So we could say index is at that. So let's say we rewrite this like, use the wrong slash again, index all right, so we're saying this times 5 is this, so let's hit run and see what happens. And there you go. So we say 1 times 5 is 5, 2 times 5 is 5. So we're printing this really simple statement of find that index value. And again, a lot of people just use I. They don't even write index. They'll just say I, and we'll just write I. So that it's a little more common of what you'll see online if you're looking at like Stack Overflow or something like that. And so this is a good example of how you use for loops. So for loops automatically escape once we hit the final number that we're doing in the sequence. While loops, on the other hand, are checking for a condition to be true or false. So whenever we're in while code, we're saying while this number is less than this, do this. So we'll say while index is less than 5, execute this code. Let's not call it index. Let's call it index number is less than 5, execute this code. And we'll say the code should be print I'm running. And then we always want to give it a way to get out of this index number. We need to declare this as a variable ahead of time. Let's do that. So let's say index number, which equals 0. All right, so we'll say while index number is under 5, print this. Now, right now, if I ran this, it would do this endlessly because it's never going to get above 5. So we need to add a little statement here that says index number plus equals 1. So it's going to add 1 to it each time. Let's hit run. It ran this code 5 times. See, it says I'm running, I'm running, I'm running, I'm running, I'm running. So it ran it 5 times because then eventually this reached above 5 and it stopped running this while loop. Now this all may seem quite complicated. I know I'm moving pretty fast through this, but you'll find out more in your textbook this week. I just want to present you with for loops and while loops so that you're aware of them and that you understand how to create quick recursion within your code. Again, use them sparingly. It's very easy to break your entire code with them, but that's the basics of for and while loops.